And we are going to talk about CIIC, and I've added one I, because while Morehouse, Lee and Walsh already mentioned before here, they've done a lot of work on classroom interaction. Now they've moved to e-classroom interaction. And what I like to add is the interactional and intercultural competence. So my intercultural is my addition to the article, because I think they cover it, but only marginally. So what I like to do this, because we've been talking about this Morehouse, Lee and Walsh, the article is 2021, recently out. It surveyed many teachers all over the world, and they came up with, the teachers came up with what they needed. These were the competencies they felt they needed. And as Angela mentioned in the previous talk, we agreed these were the competencies. In particular, Morehouse, Lee and Walsh identify this idea how difficult it is to communicate content across the screen because we don't have the paralinguistic features we have in class, and how challenging it can be. And at the time it takes, longer time, sometimes we forget. Engaged learners in the two-dimensional, we're flat, we're a flat screen. We're not three-dimensional yet. Perhaps with artificial intelligence coming along now in the metaverse, we might be able to go three-dimensional, but not yet. Even if there are already some virtual exchanges using augmented reality, which are going three-dimensional. So we can probably go there with the next ViVEXELT. Facilitate interaction in digital classroom, not easy. And it is so easy for the participants to withdraw and disappear and stay behind black boxes. We all know that. Attend to students' emotional needs. And in my research, I found over and over again, most participants and students do not like technology to begin with. There are very strong prejudices against technology. They're still anxious about technology despite COVID. And so there is all that emotional side which needs to be addressed. And it has intercultural nuances. So I found some nations, some cultures are more open to technology than others, even in the East. So I have students from the East, from different countries in the East and the South and the West, and they have different attitudes depending on their beliefs on technology. And also maintain a sense of presence. This is a big theme. Interestingly enough, if you're interested in presence, is something that Facebook's now Meta boss has addressed in the video, which you might find online on the metaverse. And sense of presence is the first thing he talks about, our Zuckerberg. And troubleshoot technical difficulties, of course. So these are the kind of the milestones in this article we have been studying on ViVEXELT. But I always bring back, and Teresa, if she's still with us, she will recognize this. I think when we used to call it telecollaboration before it became virtual exchange and collaborative online international learning, we also had all these other intercultural features. We had all the literacies, and it's not just the technical literacies, it's critical digital literacies. And I don't believe in the digital natives. Prensky talks about my students being digital natives. Believe me, they're not. I teach them every day, and they need to learn more because you're more employable if you acquire these competencies. So, of course, we also know that the Common European Framework, another element in ViVEXELT, has changed. It now includes online interaction in the new compendium. So we have to address this. The Vietnam policy on languages is that you have adopted the Common European Framework. In the UK, it is a bit hit and miss. In theory, it should be adopted, but not everybody adopts it. Of course, in Europe, it is adopted throughout, and then it's a mixed picture depending on other countries. But I believe even in China, they're now talking about adopting this. So without carrying on too much myself, I'd like to move on now to our results, and I'd like to introduce you to our research assistant on ViVEXELT, Jenny, who is now going to take over from me. Jenny, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Marina. Yes, I'm Jenny, working as the research assistant on ViVEXELT. And I'm going to just talk you through some preliminary sort of research results that we've had. We asked participants to submit reflective journals on their ViVEXELT experience. And we've analysed 22 journals from phase 1 of the project using NVivo software, and ran a word frequency query to reveal the 1,000 most frequent words in those reflections. And this word cloud here is a visual representation of that query. Obviously, the general words here really stand out. So you've got online students and teaching. But what's interesting is that breakout was the 5th most frequent word and rooms was the 7th. So this breakout rooms emerge as a real key topic, key theme from this analysis. Next slide, please. And there were lots of positive responses to experiencing breakout rooms, which was great. This idea of the secure, safe space. Someone said I could be listened to and noticed. So this opportunity to move into a smaller space was really welcomed. Okay, lessons came more interesting. There was interaction and engagement and opportunities to exchange ideas and interact with each other. And also this, building rapport through informal chat, this recognition that interacting informally is so important, and the breakout room facilitated that. And another one there, with teachers, so reducing teacher talking time, taking the focus off the teacher and onto the students. Breakout rooms obviously can be used for that. Yeah, next slide, please. And obviously there were some challenges that came through in those reflections. And it's just important to say here that these, we've tried to look at these in the phase 2 of the project. But these are some actual quotes here. I'm not going to sort of go through all of them, but just one or two. The first one, if instructions are missed when everyone goes into the breakout rooms, how does everyone know what to do? The session's not going to be productive, is it? So that was a key point that came through. Second one there is about lack of equipment. Some students perhaps didn't have a microphone. So there's this recognition that, everyone hasn't got the same access to technology. And, how do we then address that? If you have to start using the chat box to write, that can take time. So there's considerations like that. And then perhaps just the third one there about, someone said it's only suitable for students to actively get involved in learning and have medium or higher level English proficiency. So there's sort of a, what about the more reluctant students, really? What about what's holding them back? How can we bring them in? Because everyone needs to be brought in. Couple more at the bottom there, but I'll move on. Don't want to take too much time. What was coming out of these challenges really was this recognition of a mediator roles. Some help's needed in the breakout groups. They're not just going to happen on their own. So to address technology, perhaps, someone needs to monitor the activity, perhaps point students to the chat box. If you can't use your microphone, use the chat box. Ensure everyone's on track and knows what to do. Make sure that everyone knows what to do with the task. And how do we bring those reluctant participants in? Let's encourage them, empower them to get involved, and that can happen in the breakout room. And obviously, while doing that, the time management of it all. So there's kind of a whole role there that's coming through. Yeah, next slide, thanks. But, there's still this problem remaining. And someone actually said this, in the real online class, there's only one teacher with perhaps 30 or 40 students, and it's very difficult to control the breakout rooms. So what do we do? And here were some reflections for action that came through from the writing. So, talking about clear instructions, maybe the teachers have to move from room to room if possible. to sort of explain things, just clarify things. Someone wrote, I plan to also to assign a group leader, moderator for each breakout room. And that's something I think that a lot of people have been saying since. And then looking at different levels, thinking about who you put into breakout rooms and mixing students up so they can scaffold learning with each other. And then finally, yes, let's, those teaching competencies that have been talked about already, we need to make sure as teachers that we acquire those and we keep them up to date, so that we're always sort of ready in this online environment. And it'll, just before I move on, it'll be interesting to see, I think, if we compare the reflections from phase 2, what's changed. But anyway, I'm going to now hand over to Farida, who's my colleague on ViVEXELT.
Hi everyone, afternoon and evening. My name is Farida and I'm an ESOL manager at the Coventry Refugee and Migrant Centre, and we teach English to speakers of other languages from refugee and migrant backgrounds. I'm also a master's student on the English language teaching and applied linguistics course at Coventry University, and I've been working on this project as expert student. So I'm currently working on my dissertation, and I'm creating a guide for CIIC mediators on how to moderate in Zoom breakout rooms. And this comes from reflections, observations, and interviews with other CIIC mediators on the challenges that we have encountered in Zoom breakout rooms and some possible solutions to these challenges. So some of the ones that Jenny has mentioned. So remembering instructions or understanding instructions is one that we found that was quite difficult. As often we find that participants don't ask for clarifications. They might be shy, they might be uncomfortable in asking things in front of others in a public space. And obviously these fall under the online management competencies, as well as netiquettes. So online etiquettes, which include turn taking, asking and answering questions, and time management in breakout rooms. We also need to ensure that everyone is involved whilst working in the breakout room and everybody participating. People can participate in different ways, which we'll look at. So what did we learn and how did we overcome these challenges? So as CIIC mediators, we tried to encourage participants in breakout rooms to put on their audio and video, as this helped participants to engage with everyone in the breakout room. If I can see you, obviously, it makes it easier for me to interact with you. But we also found that there were lurkers, and we defined the lurkers as, VAX 2010 defines lurkers as those who do not interact, people who don't have their audio or their videos on. But we learned that that doesn't necessarily mean non-participation, as environmental factors can contribute to people not participating and not feeling comfortable within those breakout rooms. And that's one of our jobs. That was one of our jobs that we needed to encourage people to do. We were also aware, however, that it was very late in the evening in Vietnam. Participants would often face distractions. For example, there'd be young children at home, and people might be doing other activities, which were, as we understood, 9 o'clock in the evening, you might be putting children to bed or, other things. And we had to manage that environment. And we found that being empathetic was an additional skill needed, and that this was key in making people feel comfortable in the breakout room. So just assuring them it was okay for them to put their cameras on. We understood there might be screaming children around, but as long as they were able to participate in their own way. Having 2 phases to this project was pivotal, as this helped us to understand many concepts mentioned above and develop our skills as CIIC mediators, and this was an important aspect. Many participants in phase 1 went on to become CIIC mediators in phase 2. And then one of these concepts that we realized was quite important was what Jenny also mentioned, was managing our time and time. So time keeps coming up again and again, because we realized that breakout room, not only were we completing tasks, it was also a space for people for socializing and building those relationships. So if I'm able to build a relationship, it's easier for me to complete a task with them. And then obviously we had the interactive lesson plan as well, which we needed to know each other in order to complete those. So in phase 2, the CIIC mediator had a more active role due to the lessons learned in phase 1. We did act as scribes, we summarized conversations, we scaffolded, we showed participants how to use the different Zoom functions. It might have been the chat, emojis, or other function in order for them to feel comfortable to communicate orally or in the written chat. So these were the new tools, and we also had to learn how to use the new tools that were introduced. So I found myself in quite a hot spot with Genially. I found it quite difficult to use, but we found that, you know, by using these tools, we were able to help participants as well in using these. So we found that we had to have multitasking skills. And these were ones that we were developing over the course of the 2 phases. I'm just going to finish off by saying, despite all of the challenges, it's been a very positive and informative experience for me. I've learned so much from this virtual exchange, and hopefully the CIIC Mediators Guide in Zoom breakout rooms should be out soon. And, you know, we hope to develop that guide as far as we can. Thank you to everybody. I think it's over to Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Farida. Hi, yeah, my name is Mike Cribb, and I'm an instructor at Coventry University. And I was one of the CIIC mediators. And it was a good experience for me, because usually when I'm going into Zoom, I'm going in as a teacher. And it brought me back to this idea that a teacher always has to be learning themselves. So it's always good to put yourself in a student's position. And this is what I was able to do through this mediator role. And it got me thinking about this idea of the teacher, the student, and the content. If we could have the next slide, please. Yeah, Garrison's and Anderson's interaction theory brings in this idea of teacher, student, and content, and these communication channels between the 3 things. And in order to get a sort of meaningful learning out of that, you need to have very good channels of communications. And as a teacher, quite often you're developing a task for a class, you've got some content there, and you work with that content for, you know, several days, and you're thinking about it, and you're saying, this is how it's going to work, this is why I want to do it, and you invest a lot of time in that. But for the students, the investment in that content and the task is much shallower. They're coming to it very new on the day. They don't know why they're having been asked to do it, really. They perhaps don't fully understand the instructions. So what we tend to do is we throw the students into the breakout room. So if I could have the next slide there, Marina. And it's very easy, isn't it, as a teacher, to just create breakout rooms. Zoom is perfect for this, and Teams as well. You know, you just click a button, and suddenly all your students have disappeared into very nice, neat rooms. You can do it randomly, all sorts of permutations, and you can just sit back and have a little coffee before you start joining the rooms. And I think we've got to be a little bit careful that we don't just sort of use this as an escape, because what happens is we throw the students into the room and they have a very shallow understanding of what the task is or what the content is. There's very little motivation for them to engage with that. As I say, they're coming to that very new and on the day. And quite often they will just sit back and think, well, this is a task that I've been asked to do, but why should I? So the mediator obviously is the in-between person between the student and the teacher, and between the content and the task. And I think that's why you do need mediators. But what I was thinking was that as you develop Zoom classes over the weeks, perhaps there can be a change in the way that the breakout rooms work. Early on, you want to have content and tasks that is much closer to what the students want to talk about. So it needs to be content that is relevant to them. It needs to be content that is fairly easy for them to grasp. with a simple task that's very sort of structured. And then obviously as you move on, thanks, Madeline. That was great. That's some great.
Sorry, Mike. I played by mistake.
Yeah, that's supposed to be the mediators. We're trying to show how the mediators can come in between the and maintain those strong relationships. And I think it's important that we do say that, you know, effectively, we can't all have mediators. We can't have paid mediators in our classrooms. So we do really have to start thinking of how the students themselves can become mediators, you know, and it's one of the competencies, I think, rather than just having the teacher developing this amazing interactional competence and solving everything. I think we've got to look towards our students to perhaps start getting into these mediator roles. So just the last slide, I think I did mention that yeah, I've summarized the problem there at the top. And this idea that we start out with breakout rooms that students can succeed with, generally bonding ones, content, easy tasks. And then as your course moves on and the weeks go by, maybe you can then move to more advanced breakout rooms. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks a lot.